Welcome, you guys. Welcome to the Heal Black Joy podcast. Hi, I'm Lola Troy, the host and curator of Heal Black Joy, the learning platform for our community to heal our Black joy with tangible and attainable programs for the mind, body, soul, relationships, and businesses. We are going to be continuing our relationship series this month by talking about all things relationships and dating. We're wrapping this up. We have covered dating in 2022. Are men from Mars and women from Venus? We've talked about alternative dating. We've also talked about dating after divorce. And tonight we're going to be discussing relationship therapy with our guest. Our guest for tonight is none other Dr. Alisha Rorer. She's from Alabama and currently resides in Atlanta, Georgia. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology from Clark Atlanta University. She has a master's degree in family studies from University of Kentucky and a PhD from St. Louis University in marriage and family therapy. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Georgia and Missouri with over a decade of clinical experience. She has worked with clients in mental health centers, inpatient mental hospital, correctional facilities, outpatient medical clinics, residential facilities, and home base. She's the owner and therapist at Rorer Psychotherapy and Consulting Services in Marietta, Georgia. She offers individual, couples, families, and group therapy. Dr. Rorer works mostly with couples who struggle with communication, trust, and challenges with intimacy, families with conflict issues, and individuals struggling with life transition, anxiety, depression, and who have experienced childhood trauma. Consultation services include interactive workshops, seminars, research projects, and speaking engagements on topics related to mental health awareness, fatherhood, relationships, communication, as well as intimacy. And I am going to get her. Welcome, you guys. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I was trying to make some tea real quick.
How have
I
you
got
been?
a lot to talk about. So.
Oh my goodness. How have you been, my dear?
I have been great. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you wonderfully.
Okay. I was trying to adjust all of this. But yeah, I've been great. How have you been?
I've been wonderful. This month, I didn't realize that I was going to have so much fun doing this topic on relationships and dating. I think as a person in this world, and I would say that I'm single, I got to clarify because my good brother last week, I don't know if you saw, he expressed what single versus unmarried. Right?
Yeah.
So single, for those of you who did not see that episode, it was really, really good. A brother by Donald Morton, who started the Remain Project, who works with men. He talked about when after dating after divorce, he was unmarried. And what he attributed that to was being not healed and not on this healing journey. And when you're single, that's in alignment with healing, you know, being on a growth journey, trying to like work out those things that, you know, that you messed up in relationships on. And a lot of times when we go into relationships, we don't work on ourselves and we just kind of bleed over into other relationships.
Yeah.
So
have to be mindful of those things. It's like a hard truth.
It's a really hard truth, and it was such an eye opener for our listeners and our Heal Black Joy tribe members, because they're like, "Oh my God, I think he stepped on my toes. I really need to work on myself before I go back into this dating world."
Yeah.
So first off, let me just talk about you just have amazing experience. You are a Black girl. You are the definition of what we call Black girl magic. You
Oh,
have done the work. You know your stuff. Tell me more about your psychotherapy and consulting services that you own. I love that.
yeah.
And, tell me, how did you get started? Like, what prompted you to get into this space of helping people in family therapy and relationship therapy?
Yeah, definitely. So this is 5 years of being in private practice. It has been a journey. It has
Congratulations.
definitely been a journey, but I would say I've always kind of been, I guess, going back from childhood stuff, I've always just kind of been a nosy person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now we call it curiosity. That's more professional. But I've always
Yeah.
been interested in how people, relationships and how people do what they do. So I've always been curious into that. I think about my parents' relationship. They've been married for 38 years, together 43.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish
That's
I could be
great.
their couples therapist, but we have boundaries and
Right.
because it's different. But no, but I think about their relationships and the relationships that I saw just kind of growing up, and I always been curious of that, right? Not even just the ones that have been together. We've talked about this on the previous podcast. We have the longevity, so we have those that may have been together for 40, 50 years, but the quality of their relationship is not really that good.
Right.
So I've always been interested in kind of the ins and outs of those things. And
Mm-hmm.
once I graduated from St. Louis, I knew I wanted to move back to Atlanta. Clark Atlanta University is my alma mater, the bread
Yeah.
and butter of everything. So I was super excited to kind of move back and just pour into this community specifically.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and we have so many people for you to work with because we all have this thing with relationships, whether it's family relationships, friend relationships,
Mm-hmm.
love relationships. There's this dynamic that we don't know how to communicate our emotions, our feelings, what has bothered us. We know we do this. We kind of model our behavior after what we see or what we've seen growing up. Whether I'm a 70s and 80s baby,
Yeah.
so that motto of what goes on in the house stays in the house,
Yeah.
that didn't
Same
serve
here.
us well.
No, it did not. And it did not. And I can't think of the person who mentioned this, but I was in school that was saying that when you think about relationships, that there are six people in the bedroom. It's you and your partner, those two, him and his mom and dad, you and your mom and dad, because those are the things that make up how we decide to interact in those romantic relationships specifically, right? So we have to
Yeah.
take into account those family patterns.
So what are you seeing? Because I'm gonna tell you, Dr. Alicia,
Yeah.
being a single woman in my 40s, my sphere of friends, colleagues, all wonderful women, all go-getting women, entrepreneurs
Yeah.
are excelling in their field. They might have been married, but they're now divorced, and all of us are single. And we're all in the continuity of conversation
Yeah.
is what is going on in this dating world and in this relationship world where we cannot su- sustain relationships. And when we look at our white counterparts, I know plenty of my white friends that have been married, been divorced. They done got married again, might be divorced again, and got married again, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to our community, and I've noticed this with men too, just the men that I've talked to, my male
Mhm.
friends, and even guys that I've talked to, potential, dating friends, they all say the same thing. And it's like, I heard a guy today, he told me, he said, dating in 22 is like Flint water, Flint,
Ooh.
Michigan water. And I was like, wow, man, what is going on? I have to ask you, what is going on in this
Yeah.
space that we
Yeah.
cannot figure it out amongst each other and come together and have sustainable relationships? What's going on?
It's a lot. I think about, I'm gonna kind of have my little note. I'm a professor. I don't know if I mentioned that. So I have my little notes. But I think
Yeah.
so. I think thinking about people comparing or understanding that every couple of relationship is different. Sometimes we want to compare. I mean, I get the black love and the couple goals and all of those things, but that can really paint this picture of what we think relationships should look like. And then when we
Yeah.
tap our little feet into the water, and it's like, this is not what I thought it was going to be, like these unrealistic expectations that I think get in the way of us being able to just get into those relationships. I think a lot of things that I see from people are not really asking questions to get to know people in the relationships. And I'm like, what are you doing when you're dating? You're going to play top golf, you're going to the movies, you're doing these activities that doesn't even really require you to interact with people.
That has been the one question or the one statement that everybody that I've talked to this month about relationships, the dating coach said it, Donald said it, you said it. We're not asking enough questions or we're not asking the right questions.
Yeah.
What are some of the questions that we need to be asking? I'll let me just tell you what I ask.
Okay.
And this is just like my measuring stick starting off when it comes to dating. I ask guys what they're passionate about. Like, hey, what brings you passion? What brings you joy, in today, in today's time? And if their answer says something like, oh, well, I'm just looking for my girl, I'm looking for my person, and it has no attachment to like their purpose or something that has to do with them, I immediately end the conversation. Because for me, if you are not passionate, if you don't have a passion that is your own, or you don't have some purpose that is your own, and we start dating and something goes awry, you're going to turn the gun on me and look at me like I'm the culprit in the demise of whatever's going on in your life. I don't want to be that person. And I don't want to have that responsibility.
Because that's heavy. That's heavy
it's
to
super
carry.
heavy.
Yeah.
But I didn't ask that question in my 20s. I didn't even ask that question in my 30s.
We're just trying to, I think it also comes with that maturity, right? So I think one of the persons that you had on there was talking about that identity and purpose of like the self-awareness of knowing who you are. So even before you get into the I need to know who I am at my core. What do I like? What is on some trivial, what is my favorite color? What is my favorite food? What do I like to do? And I think when you do know who you are at your core, it's easier for you to ask those questions of other people and somewhat kind of demand an answer. You haven't done your own work. You don't know what you like. I know what I like. And then allowing those questions to go. So I like what you mentioned as far as like knowing, asking what you are, what you're passionate about. To get a sense of kind of who they are at their core. I would also, side note, I watched this TV show called Married at First Sight.
Yeah.
And they was talking about some of the new people. And one of the girls on there said that she asked the guys what their credit score is. Like, what's your credit score? A lot of the questions that she was asking at the very beginning was very abrasive, was a lot. So I think being mindful of how far you go in when you're asking those questions, not getting in too deep, right? Not asking too much about people's traumas and their debts and things like that in the beginning. And I think it's kind of hard to put a time limit on if it's, 6 weeks or 90 days or what have you. But in the beginning, I would say just be able to have fun. And just kind of enjoy yourselves and each other that way. But I think as it continues, getting to know some of those core things, as I was saying before, discovering who you are and owning it and asking questions about, do you know who you are? Asking about or knowing what your own boundaries are. Asking about their boundaries, right? Ask them if they went to therapy before. I know that's kind of a geeky question, but I mean, now, therapy is cool. Hopefully people
Dr.
think therapy is cool now.
Can I say, I talked to 2 guys this week and both of them said they would never go to therapy. And I was just like, you're Black.
Yeah.
We all need
We
therapy.
all need therapy. Black men
Like,
therapy. They have one for therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men. Go to the website, find a
we have too
therapist.
many resources out here for you to think that you don't need to go and talk to someone. And I know what the apprehension is. I
Mm-hmm.
know for our community, the apprehension is a lot of times growing up, we didn't have people that looked like us that were in that field. But that
Exactly.
is not the case now. That is not, you know how like my dad is really big on when he goes to see a doctor, he's going to immediately trust a Black doctor before he would trust a white doctor, because he's just from that generation. Like,
Exact. Yeah.
this
That
person
connection that you
understands
know it, you
me.
get it.
Right. They know my story. They have probably had similar experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to trust him automatically. Not saying that they're, equipped to handle whatever it is my dad has
Yeah.
or is dealing with, but there's just a sense of comfort with somebody that looks like him. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for people, when especially in the mental health space, a lot of times our community, we won't go see anybody because of the stigma that when we were growing up, there was nobody that looked like us and there was
Mm-hmm.
nobody that could speak to our experience.
Exactly.
Have you noticed that? Have you felt
Yes.
like people are a bit apprehensive to do that?
They have. They have. They've been, excuse me, apprehension about seeing it, about going to a therapist. Can they trust that person? Will that person be able to understand their experiences? And I have a lot of Black men that comes to therapy, whether it's for individual and for couples therapy. And I'm like, thank you. This is great. Tell your friends, about it. And I think, and most of these are more of the older men. And some a couple of younger ones as well, that have taken that leap of faith and said, I want to do something different, and kind of trust it. But it does help when someone does look like you that can speak to your experience, and not judge you for the
Yeah,
things that you're going through.
absolutely. I think that's amazing. Um, in those moments where you have those people that come to see you, is it the wife that's dragging them to therapy?
There's a I always can tell, right?
Yeah.
When it's the whoever makes that initial phone call or the initial email, and it's, we're looking for a therapist, and you see the tagline and it's coming from the woman. Every now and then it's usually from the man, but it's typically for the women. And I do work with a lot of couples who are dealing with like infidelity recovery. And that's always interesting too, regardless of the gender, right? The person who was cheated on is the one emailing. So even if the guy was cheated on, he's emailing, and you think, well, why are you emailing? Just be the person who broke the trust. But I think that also comes from this anxious stuff, vulnerability, that probably gets in the way of that as well. Not taking accountability to say, okay, you did it, so you call and you make the appointment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I don't know if you saw, we did an alternative dating
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And my good friend Raheem,
Yeah.
he and his wife have an alternative dating relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
it's non-monogamous. It's an ethical non-monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
And in this dating world, I've seen more people or more couples uh taking the reins and saying, hey, monogamy is not really working for us, and this is what I've chosen, this is the lifestyle that we've chosen, and are you a willing participant in this? Of course, that's not something that I would per se do,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just interesting to know about it and understand that a lot of couples and a lot of relationships are now going that route. Have you noticed
Yeah.
that this is happening um,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
therapy?
I have definitely seen that, me and some of my colleagues as well, where people are deciding to do something different. And then also getting the backlash for some of their family and friends of, no, you were married, we went to the wedding, it was just supposed to be you two. How dare you? What are you doing? It doesn't make sense. And I come from a place of not judging, right? It's not for me to
Right.
say what you should or should not do. My thing is, that's one thing I love about relationships, is that we get to decide what the relationship is going to look like. And
Yeah.
as long as we're on the same page and we agree and we have the boundaries, then we can abide by that. So whether it's a monogamous, whether it's 3 people, 5 people, 7 people, everybody can come to therapy, sit on the couch, work through, learn conflict resolution skills, learn how to communicate, learn to ask for what you need, and you can make it work.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of hurdles that we're dealing with in the dating and the relationship world with men and women specifically. And that is 1, conflict resolution, and 2, just straight communication. We did a show, Our Men from Mars and Women from Venus, and Racine, another good brother, and I loved how he broke it down. He said a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with, our trauma is cultural. So it's from a cultural standpoint, and when you unpack it and you go back to it being cultural, we attach ourselves or align ourselves with those that have similar experiences or similar backgrounds. So we trauma bond, right?
Trauma bond, yeah.
And we get in these relationships not asking the right questions, and we're bleeding over. And then the other problem is we don't know how to resolve conflict.
Yeah.
What can we do? What is just a good tool that we can use to resolve conflict?
I think the biggest thing I would say is listening. Sometimes, a lot of times, we are trying to listen to respond as opposed to, or listening to just like, let me just listen so I can just say my part. And then the conflict continues to escalate, as opposed to listening to really understand what the partner is saying. Because a lot of times that I've seen in my work with couples, that they're typically saying the same thing. Sometimes it's semantics, but you both want the same thing at the end of the day. You both want the same core. You're just fighting against each other. So I would say the biggest thing about conflict is learning how to just listen, actively listen. And when part of that means when you're having those conversations to process things in a slow way, right? How do you slow the conversation down? That I'm going to say what I need to say. You're going to have this active listening response where you're going to repeat what you heard me say. Is this what you're saying? Did I get that right? Okay, then now this is my response, as opposed to making assumptions and then just running with it.
A lot of times we're triggered in the moment, and we have a story that's attached to the trigger that's running in our head, right? And it's not necessarily the reality of the conflict, but the trigger might be, the tone and how someone talked to me, which triggered me from my childhood trauma. My daddy or my mama yelled at me all the time. So I'm a person who shuts down when someone starts yelling. But if you don't have those authentic, what I call naked conversations with your partner, they don't know that. And then they'll be saying something and yelling in the moment, and you completely shut down. And then you get nowhere doing that because you're being triggered, and that story is playing in your head like, I don't feel safe. This is not going anywhere. So I'm going to literally shut down in this very moment.
Yeah.
How do we not, even if we're triggered when we're having a conflict, how do we not play that story in our head? Like you were saying, we got to slow the conversation down. A lot of times we don't know how to slow the conversation down, and we just shut down.
Yeah. We have a stonewall. We get defensive. We walk away. I'm done. I think one of the biggest things that I tell couples when they're in the midst of a conflict, even before all of that, know what your triggers are. Know when you go to a 10. I know what a 10 looks like for me, and I know when I'm boiling. So when I get to a 7, it's time for me to cool off. But I need to have enough self-control to say I need to take a time out and I need to go cool off. Not call my friend that's going to hype me up and say, girl,
go at it.
You're right. But I need to do something that's going to soothe me so that for both of us to go to our corners, self-soothe, and be able to come back after we've kind of de-escalated that, and then be able to ask for what we need. So one, I would say, is recognizing what that your 1 to 10 looks like so that you can be aware of it. What does that look like? Do your heart start beating fast? Do your palms start getting sweaty? Do you hear that voice? Do you hear that narrative playing in your head over and over again? How many times does it have to go on repeat before you have to say it's at a 10, right? So a lot of that is that awareness and the self-control, and to be able to articulate that to your partner. Hey, I'm feeling flooded. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to take a time out. I need 20 minutes to cool off, and let's come back and let's revisit this conversation. And not you need a timeout or you look like you're, no, I need a timeout.
I need a timeout. I know, and I can speak for my friends, and my experience is that a lot of times, because of how we were raised, we didn't have that verbiage or these tools, these emotional tools in our tool belt to utilize when we're in conflict or when we're having an argument.
Yeah.
So what happens is we've gotten into this toxic pattern of just kind of yelling at each other, and then when one person in the relationship understands, okay, I have these tools now, you know what, I need a timeout. But the other person might not be working on their emotional IQ or emotional
regulation and stuff.
Yeah. And they're not self-aware, and they just keep provoking you. What could one do if you have a provoking partner?
So this is where boundaries come into play, right? So you have someone, you've been going to therapy or you've been doing your own work, your other person has not. Also being able to share with your partner, this is a side note, that when you are making your progression in therapy or your own work, share that growth with your partner to let them know what you're doing.
Right.
And not keeping it a secret. But when you're in that moment, you're like, look, I need to take a time out. I'm feeling flooded. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need 20 minutes. The other person continues like, no, you're not going to walk away from me. Let's keep having this conversation. I'm not ready to be done. Well, I'm ready to be done. This isn't healthy for me. I'm going to walk away now. And I promise you, I'm going to come back in 20 minutes. And research says it would take 20 minutes to self-soothe is good. So that may mean you may have to gently walk away. Now, you don't want to run away and say peace, bye, because now you may have struck up some anxious or some attachment injury. Maybe that person have been abandoned. So you don't want to trigger them now because now you're leaving. So be mindful of how you exit that conversation, because you have control over that. You may not have control over how they respond to you setting the boundary and saying no, but you do have control over how you respond to that. So being able to, in a calm way, because now you're calm and you're aware, you have the tools. It's up to you to be able to be calm and ask for what you need. And if there's continue to go at that, being able, like, I respectfully, I'm going to have to leave. I need to calm down. We both need to calm down. Can we please get 20 minutes and come back and have this conversation?
Right. Can we talk about, I know you were talking about attachment styles. Can we get into the different attachment styles that we, experience? Because I think a lot of times people don't even understand what attachment styles are and
how they're developed.
How they're developed. So can you kind of like tell us what, because I kind of put it on our page today because I wanted to talk about it today. But when we talk about the different attachment styles, like the secure attachment, let's talk about each one and kind of break them down. What that looks like inside of a relationship.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about how the development of attachment styles.
Okay,
so you think about attachment figures, so your parent, your guardian, whoever that person is, think about those people. Yeah. If that person was very attentive and responsive and made you feel very secure, when they left to go to work, you were okay. When they dropped you off for school, you felt secure because you knew they were going to come back. Then you know that would be more of a secure attachment, right? You feel secure in knowing that if your parents leave and they come back, they're going to be there for you, right? Yes. In a sense that you're, when you grow up, you tend to be more social, more outgoing,
Mm-hmm.
more free, more trusting in those kind of relationships. But if you
Yeah.
think about this attachment figure or these or the guardian, and maybe they were inconsistently not there, right? Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they give you a hug, sometimes they don't. Or maybe a parent, an absent parent. Sometimes they visit you, sometimes they say it's very inconsistent. You would see how that would cause some anxiety. So that
Yeah.
would be that preoccupied anxiety or anxious attachment that develops. And then if you have that attachment figure who was consistently not there, then maybe because they had multiple jobs or kids and their attention was just everywhere else but for you and you wasn't getting a lot of attention, then that
Mm-hmm.
would be the avoidant, whether that's dismissive or fearful, which I'll go into in a second. But when you think about those attachment figures or those parents being, like I said, there or not there, if they were there, secure. If they were inconsistently not there, that's anxious. If they were consistently or inconsistently not there, it's anxious. And consistently there, it would be avoidant. So when you think about, what was it, the dismissive avoidant, and what that looks like. So dismissive avoidance likes to, in a sense, downplay emotions. I like to think about those that have this emotional wall, right? I don't need a relationship. I'm good. I'm independent. I know how to self-soothe. Sometimes they may come off as very cold and uncaring. Like they don't need anybody. They're very self-sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's probably because they had a parent who left them alone. They probably felt very unseen, hence why they were able to have this kind of cold kind of demeanor. And then you have the fearful avoidant, right? So this is somewhat kind of sending those mixed messages, but they are the people who tend to maybe shut down, have some interpersonal anxiety about things. The fearful avoidant may be the people who were kind of like the performers. The parents always tended to them or asked them for something. The people pleasers. They are the ones that tends to be fearfully avoiding, which is a little bit different than a dismissive person in the relationship or in that from that attachment standpoint.
And you're breaking this down makes me go back to the conversation with Racine where he talks
Mm-hmm.
about it's cultural
Mm-hmm.
because when I think about me growing up and my friends growing up, I don't think any of us had secure attachments. We
Mm.
grew up with secure attachment style. And that's because in our community and in our culture, our parents were not necessarily so emotionally available for us. And it wasn't really their fault. They were trying to pay bills and trying
And
to keep
figure it
food
out.
on the table,
Yeah.
just trying to keep a family together. They were doing what they could do, but it wasn't from a lens of, I'm going to really, really shower you with a lot of security, a lot of emotional,
Mm-hmm.
connection. Our fathers were working. Those
Yeah.
that were in the home, they were
Yeah.
working.
They were
Our
working.
our
Yeah.
mothers were, if they were in the home, they were busy trying to keep the home organized.
Afloat.
So
Yeah.
they were working. So they
Mm-hmm.
really didn't have time to sit and
Pour
coddle
into
us.
you and be there. Oh, you fail? Let me get you a band-aid. Let me make sure that you're okay, right? It was
Right.
that, well, I know they love me, but did they tell you? Did they show you more than just I got a food over your head, doing hot food, clothing, and shelter, right? There's more than one ways to do that to feel secure.
And that's a question that I ask my coaching clients, like, when was the last time someone ever said that they loved you? Or when was the last time that you felt someone displayed love to you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly enough, a lot of them, it would take them a very, very, very long time to come up with an answer
Yeah.
because when they think about their parents and their grandparents, they don't even really remember hugging their parents or their mom and their dad saying, I love you. Now,
Yeah.
as their parents got older,
They tend to, yeah.
they
I
tend
see that
to,
happening a lot. They're right. They don't. And I think that also goes into those relationships as we were talking about, right?
it
Having a
does.
parent who did not pour into that to make you feel special, that hugged you, that made you feel cared for and told you, I love you and showed that, right? So now you're in this relationship and you don't even say, I love you. It's like, but you know it, right? Because I gave you a gift, because we're spending quality time, or all of those love languages.
And I think what happens with that particular scenario is that you go out and you trauma bond and you're like, oh my God, this guy, he reminds me of somebody that I know. I feel like I've known him all my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. You literally got a
That's your
relationship
dad.
with your daddy.
That's your dad. Yeah. That's your mom.
And
That's why
then
they look so familiar. That's why it feels so comfortable.
and then a year in, you're frustrated because your boyfriend or your husband is emotionally disconnected.
Yeah.
And you're holding him hostage to this idea of a person that he never was to begin with.
No.
And then we get disappointed. And that's when the betrayal starts.
Exactly.
And that's what he was talking about. That's cultural.
Exactly.
So,
And I wonder if people, we going back to what I was mentioning before, the self-awareness, right? If we know that this is what's happening, that this feels familiar, but yet we still don't do anything about it. Because once I acknowledge it, that means I have to do something. That means I have to leave. That means I have to say goodbye. That means I have to walk away. And I don't want to be alone.
When you're talking about self-awareness, yeah, we recognize that it's familiar, but are we recognizing it's familiar from a place of trauma bonding? Or are we recognizing that it's familiar like, oh, this is something that I can deal with because I've dealt with it my entire life.
Yeah.
I know how to move in this space.
I'm equipped for it. Yeah.
I'm equipped for this already. I've dealt with this. So I'm equipped for it. So there's that self-awareness that says, hey, I am worthy of something better than this. And then there's that self-awareness that says, I'm equipped for this. I can handle this.
I can do this. I can save. I can fix. I can help. I can manage
fix.
it.
I can save. I can, I call it making people digestible for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I'll do is, or what somebody will do is, they will literally nitpick at every little thing, over time to make you digestible for them.
For them. Yeah. Yeah.
What do we do, Dr. Alisha?
Go to therapy. I think we have to start really being honest with ourselves, right? As you're talking about the different types of awareness, right? I'm aware because it's comfortable and it's familiar, versus I'm aware that this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, some of that too, goes into that gut feeling, that intuition that we all have. Because if we lean into that gut feeling that says, I don't know, then we should do something about it, right? But I think a lot of times we ignore that part of us. That yes, this is comfortable, this is what, but something doesn't feel right.
My girlfriend said that this week. She said, Lola, going forward in relationships, when I hear a no in my gut, it is a no. I gotta stand firm in that no, because a lot of times when you just want a relationship, when you just want connection, and you want to relate to someone, you will tune out the no that you hear, because we all have an internal compass.
We do.
We know when God has left the building, as my friend said, when God leaves the room or God has left the building.
Yeah.
You know it. You feel it. You get it you feel it in your gut. And it's like, but you mute that noise that tells you no, that you need to keep going. And it's like Beauty for Ashes. INT says that's discernment. And you have to pay attention to it. But a lot of times we do not pay attention to it.
And I think it's coming from a place of fear, right? But then I think question, what are you afraid of? Do you trust yourself that this gut is not going to lead you the wrong way, that intuition is not going to lead you the wrong way?
And it could be a place of unworthiness too.
Yeah.
You're thinking, I understand this. Like you say, it's familiar. I can deal with this. I can
Mm-hmm.
deal with somebody having an explosion. I can deal with somebody going off on me because I'm used to that. Like,
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
what that looks like. You know, it's familiar to me. I grew up in that. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with that.
Yeah, it's been normalized.
It's been normalized.
Yeah,
What do we do? How do we get back connected to that inner theme,
inner
that
work.
gut? Yeah.
Yeah,
How do
yeah,
we go back to feeling like, you know what, I'm worthy of something better than just being verbally and mentally and emotionally
yeah.
abused?
So going back to what I was saying about that, knowing what your boundaries are, right? I think it's also that internal self-worth of being able, who am I at my core? Let me remind myself of who I am, or reintroduce myself to know who I am at my core, as far as like,
Yes.
what are your beliefs? What are your values? I think affirmations are so important, and not just the I am love, I'm beautiful, but why? So really expand on some of those affirmations that you may say to yourself, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
create this narrative to go along with that, um, to kind of expand who you are at your core.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also a matter of what we feed ourselves, right? Being mindful of the songs that we listen to, the TV that we watch, the people that we're talking to that's surrounding us, that are pouring into us.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes the things and the memes and things on social media is not always positive, right? And it
Yeah.
seeps into our spirit. And sometimes that's another kind of confirmation of that I'm not worthy of love, or I'm not worthy of getting someone and sustaining that relationship, or I don't feel like I have the right tools, or that I'm good enough, or even I don't trust that gut
Yeah.
or that intuition.
Donald said last week he had been on a clubhouse that day, and he was so shocked because people didn't know that they were worthy of joy.
Yeah,
They didn't know that they were worthy of happiness. And that continuity of conversation about worthiness and it being cultural, it's cultural for us to think that we're not supposed to have a certain thing, or you know, a certain relationship without struggle, right? I call it struggle love. Like, I'm
mm,
gonna be down in the trenches with you.
yeah,
I'm a ride or die chick. I'm a struggle through it. And it's because a lot of our beliefs are based in struggle. Can you talk to that thought process, like how we shouldn't have to struggle in love?
no, that it shouldn't be that difficult. And if it is, we should be questioning, right? I think it goes back to asking questions, not only to our partners, but to ourselves. Where does that come from? Why do I feel like I don't deserve to be in this relationship? Why do I feel like I'm unlovable? Why do I feel like, where did that come from, that I feel like I have to struggle through that? Did I see my parents struggle? Do you hear these other stories from other people that say, oh, we didn't have a pot to piss in and look at us now? Do you want that?
But if that's all they've seen, if their
Mm-hmm.
vantage point is they saw struggle love in with their parents, right? And then in their community, all you see are relationships. Because I've had this conversation with a male friend of mine, and I asked him, I said, you know, why are you single? You're like, you know, you got all the attributes of someone who could be
Yeah.
in a very good, sustainable relationship. You're like, you're a good man. And his answer to me was, all my friends that are married are miserable.
Hmm.
All of them. And he said, why would I go down the road of getting in a relationship, get married, and be just like my friends who are miserable? And I said, well, why do you think that they're miserable? He said,
Right.
because they saw their families and their friends struggle in love. And so they thought that was normal. So they took it upon themselves to struggle in love.
That this is what you're supposed to do, right? I'm supposed to stay together for 10 years and fight it out, because that's what I saw my grandparents do it. That's what I saw my parents do, right? It's the quantity over the quality, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to get everything out of it because that's just what you do.
Yeah. And a lot of times I remember during COVID, people were talking about, you know, oh, grandmama and granddaddy, they stayed together for 60, 75 years, right? And then the girl was like, but yeah, y'all didn't realize that granddaddy had a whole nother family on the other side of
Other side of the
town.
track.
And
Yeah.
granddaddy was a drunk. And grandma has always had to, like, put up with this up and down roller coaster of emotions and this ride of emotions
Mm-hmm.
with granddaddy. But y'all calling that couple goals.
Yeah.
Because she's been
Because
married
they
for 67, 70 years.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's also about even like finding like the hope, right? So if you're, and you wouldn't know this obviously unless we're obviously listening to this conversation or going to therapy. Because when you're in that darkness, you don't know. You're just stuck, right? You don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know. You don't know what's on the other side of that. You don't know that you don't have to stay. You don't have to struggle love, right? So when I think, if you think about finding other images, now this is different than trying to find coupled goals, right? But just in the general sense of finding other people
Where do
that
you
you can.
where do you find that? If in our community, right?
We don't have that
Where
many
do we
people.
find it? I think that's the big
$1 million question. Because
that's
where
the
do you?
$1 million question, because I don't know if you've experienced this as a therapist, but COVID tested a lot of relationships.
Oh, it was so many people in couples therapy. People think, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people divorce in the last year or two because
Yeah.
they were kind of coasting along in relationship or functioning and kind of existing in each other's space,
Mm-hmm.
but not having to deal with one another because one person's going to work and the other person's dealing with the kids, and you kind of get into your routine. And then what happened was COVID shut everything down where everybody's at home, and now you're looking at this
Right in the
person
face. Mm-hmm.
right in the face. You're looking at them. You got to deal with this person every single day. And what you're realizing is, I don't even know who you are, sir. I don't even know who you are, ma'am.
No.
And you've been in a marriage 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you like, I don't even like this person.
I don't. Yeah. Irritation. Like, why do you scratch your hair like that? Why do you eat your food like that? Because they never really been able to notice those things until, like you said, they're forced to look at each other, and now that relationship is threatening. Now I can't deal with this anymore. Their tolerance is low.
The
And now
tolerance
it's
is low.
I can't deal with this. But I would say the problem started way before COVID, right? COVID just highlighted the stuff that was
COVID
going on.
highlighted it. And how do we, because I've noticed, and this is just this is just me, because I'm a connoisseur of social media, only because I'm in the content
Yeah.
space. So I'm looking at comments, and when you look at people that are men that are telling women, hey, in order to keep a man, you must do this, or in order to, attract a man, you must do this. And the consensus with women now, this modern day 2022 woman, is
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, no, I'm not getting ready to do that. I'm
Yeah.
not getting ready. I don't have to do that anymore. My grandmother did it because in order to get a bank account, she had to be married to my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather, right?
Right.
My
Exactly.
mama did it because she just modeled behavior after my grandmother because she thought that was the right thing to do. But nah,
No.
I don't want to do this just to say that I'm married to you.
Yeah, just for the sake of doing it, right? I think someone put in the comments about finding self-love and love first, right?
Yeah.
That we, again, going back to, you know who you are, you love yourself, that when you tap into that part of you, that superpower love, it's like, whoa, I don't have to deal with that anymore. I can do something different. I have a voice. I can ask for what I need. I can say that doesn't work for me, or that doesn't work for me anymore.
When it doesn't work for us, I want to say, and I know that when you set your boundaries and you're saying, hey, these are the things that are non-negotiable,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you're dealing in the dating world and the guys are not, or the women are not measuring up to those non-negotiables,
Mm-hmm.
are we just to assume that we are dating in the wrong dating pool and that we need to venture out to other spaces that might not be as familiar to what we're used to or what we've tried before.
That could be something too, right? Questioning what keeps you in this comfortable, familiar pot or this, this pond. Maybe you can venture out and say, I want to expand my horizons and do something else and take a risk to see what else is out there, to kind of push beyond those limits. But I think in the sense of not compromising, if you know what you want, and I was going back to what I was saying before, thinking about what you need going into the relationship. If I know I need someone that's going to like thinking about what do you need when you're angry? What do you need when you're sad? What do you need when you're frustrated? What can you give yourself and what do you need from your partner? And if you know that I really need cheesecake with, caramel and pecans when I'm not feeling good, and I need someone that's going to be able to, that likes to do those types of things for me, then that's going to be that. Versus, I don't like the planned dates. That's just not me. I'm never going to be that type of person. I don't even like, they're telling you who they are. They're telling you what they can do and what they're not going to do. Take heed to that and listen. I think a lot of times people are telling us who they are and what they will and will not do. We're just not paying attention. We're not listening.
Yeah. Yeah. And what Mathis L. Motivator says, you focus on your goals and passions and you're more likely to attract someone that shares some of the same qualities and interests. That is so true. I think attraction and alignment is about you knowing who you are and what you're here to do. And then you will attract a person that is in alignment with those things that you're supposed to do. But if you don't know who you are and you don't know why you're here, what you're supposed to do, you're just kind of like, it's almost like trying to throw gum on the wall and see if it'll stick.
And see what sticks. Yeah. And I think about that, like if you go back and look at the types of people that you were attracted to, right? In your teens and your 20s and your 30s, and they should be different. I'm saying should in quotations, right? Because we may have been attracted to a certain type of person when we was in high school, right? And then as we grow and mature and learn more about what we want and who we are, we're attracted to a different type of person, right? I think not the stereotypical, but the common things is maybe wanting someone who's like the bad boy, right? And then you grow up and like, I don't want a bad boy.
Right.
I want a good man.
I don't want a bad boy.
I don't want a bad boy anymore. You hope you learn and you say, I want to be able to attract someone that's different, someone that's in alignment because I've elevated.
Yeah. Yeah. And that says a lot about you as a person in your growth, your personal growth, when you're by who you attract, like, and what you accept in your life. Because a lot of times we get mad at them, like, oh, this person wasted my time. No, they didn't.
Accountability.
They were just kind of living their life as they live their life. You wasted your time because you did not set up the boundary with your non-negotiables. And when they showed you that they were not going to adhere to the non-negotiables, you should have bounced. But you
should have taken heed to that. Yeah, you got to take accountability for your part. What did you contribute to this long, unnecessary relationship?
What can we do as women? Because a lot of our Heal Black Joy tribe members are women, and I want to shout out my men too because they tune in as well. But as women that are in this dating relationship space, a lot of times we're looking and pointing the finger at guys, like we want to hold them accountable for, like, saying wasting our time and those things. What can we do to become more accountable for the part that we play in these relationships that go south?
Yeah. Taking accountability and responsibility. And that takes a lot of honesty. That takes you looking in the mirror and saying, what part do I play in this? What's the pattern? What's the part that I typically play? Do I typically play the victim? Oh, that's a hard truth.
Dr. Alisha.
Is it always me? Is it always them? It's never me? Where does that even come from? Right? So I think we in our sister circles, we have to be able to do that as well. And hold our girlfriends, our sisters accountable in those.
That is a big one, because I think a lot of times we have not been holding ourselves accountable for the choices that we've made when it comes to bad decisions in partners, and when it comes to bad decisions and staying too long in a relationship based on the culture of saying, I need to stay in this because I'm used to struggle love. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to struggle through this. And at the end, I'm going to get a reward.
I'm going to get a prize. Yeah.
I'm going to get a prize at the end for the loyalty of struggling.
And I think about that. I mentioned that in one of my podcasts when I was talking about fatherhood, about this tough love. Like, why does love have to be so tough? Why do I have to give you tough love in order for you to be able to feel it? Right? Or when I think about when someone has to yell, why do I have to yell and scream in order for you to get it? Why do we have to struggle and do all in order for us to feel like it's going to be sustainable? That we got to be able to, again, hold ourselves accountable, acknowledge it, that, hey, this isn't working. And if we feel ourselves like, yeah, but it is, but what part of it is working? And that's the honesty part. But it's not. I'm doing this because of the culture. I'm doing this because I saw my mom do it, because I saw my grandmother do it. Or were they happy? Did you see them tell each other they love each other? Did you see them hold hands? Was there this emotional connection? Were they both faithful? Like, paint the picture. Look at, analyze Big Mama and Big Dad. Analyze their relationship. Really, was it really what you thought it was?
Are we looking at it with rose-colored glasses? Are we looking at our grandparents and our parents' relationship with rose-colored glasses? Yeah. Is that what we're doing?
Yes. Because we see always, and I think because we see the quantity of it, right? We see the numbers. And number sounds good. But it means nothing if you don't have the quality, like the whole wedding and the marriage, right? The wedding sounds really good, fun. The party, the cake, and the eating, all that sounds real good. But the real work is the actual marriage. Yeah. But I think we live in sometimes this fluff, this fairy tale.
Yeah, I can say that. I had a bomb wedding. Like, we had 300 some guests. We had a full band. I sang. My ex-husband played. It was a party. Okay.
Yeah.
And we couldn't sustain a marriage because we didn't have the emotional tools, conflict resolution. We didn't know how to do that. We didn't know how to communicate well when it came to just expressing ourselves about the things that we needed, the things that we wanted for ourselves and for each other.
Exactly.
What about couples having a plan? Because a lot of times individuals will have a plan of what they want to do in their life, but when they come together as a couple, there's no
shared goals,
There's
right?
no shared goals.
People are living these parallel lives, right? They're living together. And a lot of times we saw that with parents and grandparents too. They're parenting alongside of each other. They're living together and they're doing this, but they're not doing this, right? And I think we have to be mindful of that, because I think sometimes people wake up and it's like, I want to be an astronaut. Like, where did that come from? Because you wasn't sharing those goals with your partner. And now all of a sudden you're going to the moon and you're leaving your partner.
Should we as a couple have a plan of action of what we're going to accomplish as a couple?
And we should, I'll say this, share your individual goals so you know about those, but then also have those coupled goals together. I give my couples a worksheet and look at 1, 3, 5, 10-year goals and thinking about it from a financial, spiritual, relational, family, health goals. But sit down and think about what are some of the goals that we want to accomplish together, and how can we hold each other accountable? How can we encourage each other and motivate each other, right? When we accomplish a goal, what are we going to do to celebrate? When we're falling down and we're struggling accomplishing a health goal or a financial goal, how can we extend each other grace and not beat each other up about it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, goes back to asking for what you need, and holding each other accountable with those coupled goals. It gives you this hope. When you have goals, without goals, we perish, right? When you
Yeah.
have goals with your partner, like, oh, we're going to save money because we're going to go to Jamaica next summer, or we have this goal to lose weight or get more fit, or we have this goal to
Mm-hmm.
repair some things for our house, or, to get closer to God, or whatever the couple of goals are. You have something to look forward to.
Not only do you have something to look forward to, but it has this connection.
It's emotional
It's
connection.
emotional connection
Mm-hmm.
that is lacking in a lot of relationships because they don't have those shared goals. It's just like nobody gave us the blueprint of how we're supposed to do relationships, right? Or marriage.
Yeah.
We just kind of get in it and try
And
to make it
figure it
work
out.
and figure it out as we go. But I think if we take the time to sit down with one another and say, hey, this is what I want to do, in the next however many years, and I know
Mm-hmm.
you want to do these things. Can you talk to us about how my good brother Damian McGee, he's our boundaries coach, my resident boundaries
Ah,
coach.
yeah.
He talked about how a lot of times when we get in relationships, what we do is we become a secondary character in another person's story. Like
Mm.
you've been a main character in your own story, and then you get in a relationship, and what you do is you
Lose
put your
yourself.
goals down, you kind of sit them to the side, and then you run over into your partner's story, and then you become a secondary partner in the story.
Yeah, you lose yourself in your whole identity. And I think I do that a lot when I think about, specifically when I have women, because they get into these relationships or these marriages and they had these goals when they were individuals. I'm going to do this and I'm going to be this. And then now they pour into their partner because they want to fix and help and do all of that. And now he's soaring to the moon and you're still here on earth trying to figure out what you're going to do, lost and confused. Don't
20
lose.
years later, you haven't accomplished anything
Yeah.
because there have been so many women, and I've done this myself, that went 10 years being a secondary character in someone else's story. And I just literally put my goals down
Yeah.
by the sidelines.
Yeah. And it turns into that, or it can turn into resentment against that person
Big
and for
time.
yourself of like, man, why did I let myself do that?
Big
That I
time.
lost me. I became this secondary character, right? But I think this is where that, being around your sisters and reminding yourself of who you are and knowing what your goals are and saying, I'm not going to allow anything to get in the way of me doing the things that I need. And I need a partner that's going to support me in my goals, just as I support him. And I need for us to hold yourself accountable on the goals that we have collectively. I want someone that's going to support me, that's going to say, go to your goals. I'll be okay. I'm going to we can do two things at once.
Right.
You don't have to lose yourself. You don't have to put down your shovel and come join me.
Right.
We were
Right.
talking about that Venn diagram, right? That I have my own individual stuff and we have our stuff together.
Yeah. Yeah. What could you say, like, if there were three things that make up a really good relationship, what would be those core things that a good relationship would be?
Mm, I would say trust. Um, and the trust is you trusting yourself and you trusting the other person. I'm also going to say vulnerability. Brene Brown talks a lot about being vulnerable. And I say, I don't trust people that I can't be vulnerable with, and I'm not going to be vulnerable with somebody that I can't trust, right? So
Mm,
you being in vulnerability and transparency is different. A lot of people are like, but I am vulnerable. No, you're transparent. Yeah, you're an open book. You'll talk about the facts, but you're not vulnerable because that takes some emotional awareness and some emotional attunement to talk about how you feel.
that is good, Dr. Alicia. They're similar, but they're not the same
They are,
thing.
yeah, vulnerability and transparency are two different things. And I think a lot of times we don't really think about. So some of that transparency stuff, people who may be avoiding attachment, they may come off as being very open. But no, you're just transparent. You're just open. You're just talking about stuff. but you're not really being vulnerable. You're not telling me how you feel. You're not telling me what you need. You're not telling me where that emotion is coming from. You're not being emotionally expressive in that way. So thinking about, do I trust myself? Can I trust my partner? Can I be vulnerable with my partner, or vulnerable with yourself, and then vulnerable with your partner? And then I would also say having fun. You need to have fun in your relationship. I think a lot of times we can be very serious, or forget the friendship part of the relationship. You can be together for, going back to the people who've been together for 25, 35 years, but are you friends? You have fun together. And I think you need that when times get tough.
Yeah, that is good. How important is, because people say love is not important when it comes to relationships going. I had a guy tell me that love is not is not important for a relationship going in our going into that second phase of your life.
Love is important. And I say love is kind of like that basic kind of foundation thing. Because I can still love you, but then sometimes you disrespect, and we get into conflict, or you're not there for that person, right? And I can say, but I love you. And you think, we question, like, is that really love? Because if you love me, you wouldn't have cheated. If you love me, you wouldn't have been dishonest. If you love me, the love is over here. Let's not even let's focus on the other things that we really need. Can I trust you? Can you be vulnerable? Can you come to me when you need? Can you communicate with me? Can we communicate in that way? I would say that I'm gonna go back. There's 3 core questions that I think we all ask. It is, are you there for me? Do I matter to you? And will you come when I need you? Are like 3 solid attachment questions that we all are asking in all forms of questions. So if we had to also think about what 3 questions, in addition to what 3 things we need someone that's going to be there for us. We need someone that's going to make us feel special, that we matter enough to them. And we need someone that, in the sense, that we can depend on, that will you come when I need you. And all of that could be an umbrella of love, or a demonstration of love. That I trust you, that I can be vulnerable with you, that we can have fun.
That is good. That is so good. What are you working on right now? I know you got so much going on. You got a podcast.
Yes, that's been an adventure.
Talk to us about your endeavors.
Yeah, so I just launched my podcast on June 1st. I'm in 4 episodes. Yay! It's called the Dr. Alisha Podcast. For the month of June, I really focused on fatherhood. My thesis and dissertation focused on Black fathers and sons relationships and the impact of father figures. So I'm all about parenting and, men being fathers. So the first month I'm talking about that, but I'm also going to be talking about the psychology of sports in the next couple of months, relationships, life, boundaries, just endless topics. So I'm super excited about the podcast. I'm also going to be launching in the fall kind of what I'm calling like the fatherhood project, or a fatherhood workshop, specifically for Black men. So that's going to be really, really fun. Just a small cohort of men to kind of talk about their relationship with their fathers and how that impacts their relationship with their son, and then providing some tools and skills to enrich that father-child relationship.
That's awesome. That is awesome. We met in the space with Dr. Tori and on her podcast, and I was so happy to meet you and find out what you were doing in this space in our community. It has been such a wonderful conversation to have you on.
Thank you.
Black Joy. You gave us so many nuggets tonight. I got to go back and watch this again and get the nuggets of relationship, like what I need to ask and the things that I need to know that I need going forward, because I think we don't ask the right questions in relationships anymore. So thank you so much for joining the Heal Black Joy tribe on tonight. For those that have tuned in, and for those that are going to listen to it on our YouTube channel, thank you for being here with us, and thank you for giving us your vulnerability and your expertise in this space.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this platform. It has been fun. I know we can talk about this all day long about
Oh my God.
relationships. It's just so much stuff to unpack. So I really appreciate you for inviting me to be on this. It's been a pleasure. Hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. And before you go, I always ask my guests. I started Heal Black Joy with our community in mind when it comes to our joy. I wanted to create content that spoke to our joy. So I ask all of my guests, what does Heal Black Joy mean to you?
Heal Black Joy. I think the first thing that comes up for me is liberation, freedom. I think about, I'm saying healing Black joy, but healing Black joy, heal Black joy. For me, just being able to be free, to be able to walk into who you are, walk into your purpose, walking in your own skin and loving it and owning it.
Yeah.
I think it exemplifies this sense of freedom.
Absolutely. I love that. I think joy is where all of the good stuff is. When I say the yummy stuff is, like the love, the goodness of who we are as people, our creativity, our connection with one another, the relationships, the things that we desire, that we talk about all the time. I think it's in alignment with joy. We have
not
joy.
happiness, joy.
Yeah. When you have it, when you have joy, because joy is a knowing. It's not like happiness that's tied to an emotion that everything has to be going right. But joy is just this knowing inside of your gut that no matter if my life is topsy-turvy at this moment, I still have a knowing that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, the joy in your spirit.
The joy in your spirit.
That is never going to go away. That even when I am frustrated, even when I'm financially frustrated, when I'm exhausted, when I'm sad, when I'm heartbroken, I can still turn in and tune into that joy.
Yes.
And then to me, that's the freedom part, right? That I'm not in bondage of this frustration and the ways of the world and all the other stuff. I can tune into that joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again, Dr. Alisha.
Yes, thank you.
For just coming on tonight and giving us so many nuggets that we can utilize in our everyday relationships. Like these are things that not only do we need for our love relationships, but our relationships with our family members, with our parents, with our children, with our friends, with our coworkers and colleagues.
Definitely.
To be able to say what we want and be able to communicate that with
and
others.
Not being afraid to. I think I'm the fear part,
afraid.
Not allowing the fear to creep up. If I don't want to burden them or I don't really know how, don't worry about that. This is about you getting what you need.
Yeah.
To get your needs met.
And it's okay. I don't think a lot of us think that, I don't think a lot of us know that it's okay to verbalize what we need.
Yeah. And this is where we have to reframe and rethink and rewire those thinkings and give yourself permission to say, I'm going to stand up and ask for what I need. And if that person can't do that, then take heed to that. Don't keep asking. Don't keep pursuing anxiously, right? Because then you're going to get disappointed because now you're expecting them to do something they've already told you and showed you that they're incapable of doing it.
Yeah.
Don't beg for it. Just say, okay. And you go, you turn and you pour into yourself and you go do that for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. Thank you, Heal Black Joy Tribe, as always, for tuning in to Heal Black Joy on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. If those that have not were not able to join us tonight can catch the episode on our Heal Black Joy YouTube channel on Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya. Bye.